Hello. Hi, now I'm not muted. Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome on in. And Dospif, I'm glad you're here. I need a command from you really quick. But Dr. B is going to lead us off, so hello.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you, Tanya, for hosting this and also doing all the back-end production work, because I am a complete Luddite when it comes to this and
fine.
really needed the assistance. So thank you for being there, donating your time. Welcome everybody to this fantastic gathering of amazing writers, DMs, GMs, performers, all of the above, as we spend the next 2 hours talking about how you can run your best tabletop RPG game. What tips do they have for you of all skill levels? But while we're doing this, we're going to be raising $1,000. That is our goal for Food Lifeline, because during the COVID-19 crisis, the demand for regular food has gone up 70%, and we need your support. And I just got the word that Mox Boarding House is going to be matching the first $250 donated. So we're going to give you the donation link in the chat. Anything you give helps, and we're going to have some fantastic giveaways as well. We've been sponsored by both Roll20 and D&D Beyond, so thank you to both of them. But first, let's hear an introduction from each of our fantastic panelists. And I would love to start off with our hostess with the mostest, our producer extraordinaire, Tanya.
Hello. My name's Tanya Pass. You've seen me around Rivals of Waterdeep as the Human Paladin Celise. I also DM over at Wandering DM's channel, a Dragon Age game, and I've DM'd one-shots here and there around the internets. And yeah, I've been playing and DMing for quite a long time, so we'll see what happens today.
All right, thank you, Tanya. And Omega, you want to kick us off next?
I can. Hi, my name's Omega. I'm muted 2 different places. Hi, my name's Omega, also known as the Critical Bard. I'm an actor, vocalist. I've been playing D&D for about 5 years now. The host and creator of the Black AF Roundtable. And yeah, I'm probably the one on this panel who has DM'd the least, but I am very knowledgeable in all things Dungeons and Dragons because I'm obsessed. So I think I've learned a tip or two in my time playing. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. And since I've been listing everybody in alphabetical order, that brings us to James.
Hello, I'm JamesJHaeck. I'm the lead writer for D&D Beyond. I have just had my 10-year DMing anniversary, my 10-year anniversary of playing D&D, in fact. I have done some work for Wizards of the Coast, working on modules like Waterdeep, Dragon Heist, and Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. And I'm super happy to talk about anything in regards to DMing. My focus is going to be on D&D, it's where my expertise lies, but this is a broad GMing panel. I'm sure I can say a word or two about something else.
Thank you so much. And Mackenzie.
Hey, I'm Mackenzie Diarmas, MakenzieLaneDA on Twitter. I just punched my mic, sorry about that. I'm an independent tabletop role-playing game online content creator. I'm the lead writer for The Islands of Sina Una, an upcoming 5e setting based around pre-colonial Filipino culture and mythology, which you can pre-order now over on the Deck of Many's website. I'm also a contributor for MCDM for both Kingdoms and Warfare and their just-announced magazine Arcadia, as well as a contributor for Maychan Press and their current Dark Matter Kickstarter, which is super exciting. I've been DMing for like a year-ish, give or take, but it's gonna be fun. I've had a lot of fun. And I'm super excited to chat about how to do that.
That's amazing. Thank you. Well, and also, I want to give a special shout out to one of your modules on the DMs Guild, I've Been, which is probably, as far as I'm concerned, the best mental health themed module out there. And I've written one too. I think it's better than mine. Well, I should say I've co-written one. I think I like yours so much.
Oh, thank you.
But everybody, I'm Dr. B. I'm the clinical director of the mental health nonprofit Take This, because it's dangerous to go alone. And I have been DMing for many decades. And as I mentioned, I also helped co-write a wonderful module on the DM's Guild called Gardens of Fog that has to do with mental health. But before we dive into our actual tips, I would like to mention to the chat that we're gonna be giving 2 things away at the top of the hour at 3 p.m. We're going to be giving away we're going to be giving away a D&D Beyond starter pack with 1 DM's guide and 1 player's handbook, a $60 value that has been fantastically provided by D&D Beyond, as well as a Roll20 Burn Bright RPG starter kit, which has been generously donated by Roll20. And if you could just go ahead and let's see, Tanya, let's get that word start.
All right, let us open the giveaway. How long do we want it to go?
We're gonna go over to the top of the hour.
So that means the giveaway is running for an hour. Is that what we're doing?
50 minutes. Yeah, 50 minutes.
Okay.
Giveaway is running for 50 minutes. 50.
Huzzah. And it is the code word start a game.
Start a game. Yeah, 1 entry per person, please. All right. So first of all, and anybody can start with this. What was the first game you ever DM'd like?
Oh God, it's been so long.
Well, I'll start because mine was recent than anyone else's. The first game I DM'd, well, I did a silly, and it's really not, but I did a silly in the sense that instead of taking a pre-written adventure or anything like that, I decided to just completely make it myself. And I was like, yeah, because I know what I want, so I want to make it. And then I went, oh no, that's a bad idea. Because there's encounters that's actually building NPCs that make sense. There's what happens if you interact with this NPC in a certain way, like what kind of DC should I set things at, and it gets all these things. And I was like, oh no, mind blank. But you know, it still made me learn very quickly that I don't want to say it's harder than it is, but it takes some time to understand exactly what DMing is. At least for me, it did. But I mean, it was fun, and it was my intro, and I didn't stray away afterwards. So obviously something was good out of it, you know. So it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Were there any like weird shenanigans that happened that day that you didn't expect?
In game or just
or both? I mean, they both happened at the same time.
Valid. Well, you know, because in this certain thing, I had set it up that the first NPC they meet actually is the big bad they have to fight at the end. They were known as the Shadow Man, but I had an anagram that they went by. It was basically this idea that like there's like different elements, and like the shadow wasn't one of the elements, so they wanted to take over. I mean, it was really cool, I guess, concept. But I thought that it was like foolproof that no one knew who this character was. And one person immediately was like, I don't trust this person. I was like, why? They done nothing but be nice to you. Nothing at all. And thankfully they didn't like go like with their feelings and try to figure out more about them. But yeah, it was scary because I was like, did my game just get ruined in the first 5 minutes? Also, I ran a chase sequence because they were running from like acidic necrotic rain that was trying to block them into this forest, and I thought that was going to go very easy, and it did not. But it's okay. It's okay. I learned what to do and what not to do.
Oh my God!
It was a good time. It was still a good time because it was my first time, and the good and the bad happened, and it made it better for me in the end, I think.
Oh, I love that so much. They saw through it immediately.
Yep, I forgot what the guy's name was. It was like something Ash Mandow. That's what his name was. But and they didn't know it was Shadow Incorporated, but they were just like, don't like him. He was like a nerd with really big glasses, and he was a scientist. He was just trying to help them. I was like, nope, you're bad. We don't like you. I'm not taking anything from you. And I'm like, okay, fine, shit. But no, it was good.
Oh my God. What about the rest of y'all? What was your first experience being a DM?
nerve-wracking. Absolutely nerve-wracking, because I mean, we've known each other a long time, Dr. B, and you know that no matter how many times I've done something, I still get terrible performance anxiety. And reflecting on it, I realized I probably wasn't as nervous as I should have been, because people are giving you a lot of trust when you're sitting at the DM chair. And I didn't take that into consideration the first few times I DM'd. It was like, we're going to play a game and it'll be super fun. And I was like, oh, there were so many things I was not aware of when I first started DMing, or thought about, or would have thought about until many years later. So it was more of a, let's have fun, let's go kill monsters, and not thinking about everyone at the table.
Wow.
That's kind of the thing about D&D, is it's a wicked complex game. It's an it's almost a cruel game to give to people to try DMing for their very first time. Give them
I would love to hear more about this from the lead writer
pages.
of D&D Beyond.
I mean, I think D&D is an awesome game, right? There's no reason why I would be writing for it if I didn't think if D&D wasn't my favorite RPG. And condensed rule sets like the 32-page booklet that comes with the starter set is awesome for new players. But when I started DMing D&D, it was 3rd edition, 3.5, and you take the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide put together. That's some 900 pages of text that, frankly, the game kind of wants you to have at least just a little bit down pat if you're going to use it. And the same is true today. Those 3 books together are still 900 pages of game. And so no matter what you're doing, unless you've just read a starter set booklet front to back, you're going to be winging it no matter what you do. And my first game was like that. I had played D&D for something like 5 sessions as a player when I first started playing. Some friends of mine owned the 3.5 core books. And I, for whatever reason, was just an insatiable storyteller. I had some story in me that I wanted to tell. I was fresh off playing Tales of Symphonia is what it was. The Japanese RPG,
Yes!
the D&D RPG, Tales of Symphonia. One of my favorite
It's so
RPGs
good.
of all time.
Sorry.
Right? You know, that's a 70-hour Japanese video game. There are 2 worlds in it. You know, it's so complex. And it's like, I want to do that, which was an incredibly stupid thing for me to do on my first time DMing a game, because I drew out this gigantic world map that, you know, 30 sessions later, by the time that campaign ended, they'd explored maybe 5% of. I thought about it all the time. I read DM tip blogs, some of which were great, some of which were questionable, some of which aren't even around anymore. And I think that experience of kind of feeling my way through this labyrinthine D&D structure, looking for blog entries and tips that helpful people had written on the internet, was the core of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Writing like advice articles for D&D Beyond, being on panels like this, is because it's hard to tell what advice is good, what advice is garbage, and what advice is super duper subjective, because everyone plays D&D differently. And that's maybe the most important lesson anyone can learn, is that something that works for you doesn't necessarily work for someone else. And so you got to be discerning. So I hope you all get some cool subjective advice that you get to mull over and chew on and think if it works for you today, because we've all got super different DMing styles, even though we all started in that same I don't know what I'm doing headspace.
So before we jump over to the next person to tell us about their first DMing experience, I gotta pause and say thank you to everyone. We're already nearly halfway at our goal. There's an error in some tracking, but we're the Mox team just let us know that we're up to $495 already, and I'm actually wondering, is there something we should do if we hit $1,000 in this first hour? Should I give away one of my ties?
No. They're your ties. No. But I will offer this. A set of Rivals of Waterdeep D4s. Or, I'm sorry, D6s.
Ooh, so if we can hit $1,000 in the first hour, you will get a set of Rivals D6s?
Yes,
oh my
from
God.
Level Up Dice.
Those are the Level Up Dice ones? The aluminium ones?
The aluminium ones.
Amazing. Amazing.
if there were conventions, we'd be giving them away at conventions, but I've got a box of 50 that you can't see off camera, so we might as well put them to a good cause.
That's amazing. Okay, so if we can reach $1,000 in the first hour, we're going to give them one of those away. That's awesome. So who wants to go next with their first DMing story? I guess Mackenzie, that's you.
Yeah. So mine's a funny one. The first game I GM'd wasn't D&D. It was Honey Heist for 30 elementary school kids.
Yes. Honey Heist is so adorable.
Amazing.
So, DMing tip, don't do that. That's just a Russian nesting doll scenario of bad decisions. But what had happened was I had just started playing like D&D sort of just for fun, mostly just sort of being interested in it and just sort of like, before I had even started like writing or even thinking about writing for D&D, but I had been just sort of talking about it, and my mom, who was on the committee for like my program at my younger sister's school, was like, oh, they're doing like a theater unit and they've got a break between doing their 2 shows. So I might have mentioned you do this tabletop role-playing game thing, which is all improv and stuff, and I might have said you could run something, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so, yeah, I had 30, like, 10 to 12-year-olds all being bears trying to steal honey, and that was fun. It was absolutely chaotic, but, like, it was one of those things where it's like, I jumped into the deep end on my first GMing excursion, and everything after that was, easier, because wrangling 30 children, people say DMing is like wrangling children. It's not. When you DM and you have to wrangle children, that's an entirely different beast. But then after that, like, that basically gave me like oh, this is really fun, because like there is so much room to play, and basically seeing these kids start to open up and understand what role-playing was and what improv was, and seeing some of them get so into it, just like fueled my desire to just sort of start doing it. And that's when I looked into DMing for D&D, and then I did my first game through my school, D&D club. That one was less eventful, but yeah, that's my GM origin story.
That's awesome. You know, you're the first person I've ever talked to who said their first GMing experience was with kids, and I will say I am a big fan of GMing for kids, because they do so much of the work for you. They come up with the wackiest, wildest ideas that you will never imagine, and your job at that point is basically containment and letting them run the game. It's an amazing experience. So you know, James, you jumped in a bit ago talking about the GMing experience, but I forget, did you share your first story?
Yeah, what can I say? I bit off more than I can chew with regards to world building, because that was something that I loved. You know, when I was around the time when I was first starting to play D&D, I was big into like fanfic writing and forum RPs and stuff like that. So I wanted that level of depth that I could do when I was writing a story kind of all on my own. And that's definitely like the first mistake I made, was being a bit too authorial as a GM. These days, I'm very, very happy to let the players take the reins and run with the stuff that I've put in front of them, let them do their thing. But my first D&D game was, all things considered, very, very, very by the book in a good, manageable way. I'd read a bunch of DMing advice before I even sat in the hot seat. So I started them in a small village. There was a quest from the local duke. They went into a forest, and the forest went into a dungeon, and they fought a hag, and they came back. And, you know, structurally, very simple, very, very straightforward. And as it always happens, the players took it completely off the rails, which is awesome. One character was a warlock who had like an invisible snake familiar or something like that, and he kept trying to poison the Duke, and I'm like, why are you doing this? He's trying to give you a quest. But that's just the way D&D goes. And if I had gone any wilder than that very basic formula, I would have been completely overwhelmed. That's why when I give advice to starting GMs, I never worry about, I tell them not to worry about being too inventive or unique, because players will grasp onto the most basic of structures and have fun with it anyway, especially if they're brand new players, which most of these players were anyway. If they're veterans who've been around for 10, 20 years, and maybe they're a little tired starting in a tavern and taking a quest from the Duke to kill a monster in the woods. But hopefully those kinds of people will be understanding of a new GM anyway. So yeah, my first GMing experience, nothing much to talk about in the small term, but it's all the big picture stuff that are mistakes I made and things I learned, that sort of thing.
So you bring up a good point, and this is something I talk about when people ask me for GMing/DMing advice, is keep it simple and do it well. And my experience has been that a lot of folks just try and throw all the cool ideas possible and this is just my bias, I would rather play a simple story done really well. But what are all of your takes on that? Like, do you throw all the cool ideas at things, or do you make things as elaborate as possible? How do you do?
I used to be... Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I will go ahead and then on to Tanya. I got this advice from Chris Perkins, the DMing Experience blog that is now archived but is findable with some smart Google foo, ran during 4th edition era. He likens every session of a D&D game to an episode of television, and an entire campaign to, a season or even an entire show's run if it goes long enough. And the best thing about thinking of that is that it forces me to imagine my sessions in a very self-contained way. Obviously, D&D sessions will kind of spill into each other, especially if players take a long time role-playing or they latch onto something you didn't prepare for. But if I can think of a discrete start and a discrete end to my session, some kind of arc, then I am guaranteed to be able to feel out where the game will go, even if things go off the rails. I've done this enough that my ability to wing it and improvise is quite refined at this point. But starting with some kind of structure, some kind of actually rather loose structure, a beginning and an end, is kind of the perfect spot for me as a dungeon master, and I encourage you all to try that.
But how do you do that without confidence? We're gonna come to that later. But Tanya, what's your take on complexity versus simplicity?
Complexity, I think, is something that newer DMs do, because it's like you watch people DM, you watch your favorite actual player or whatever, and you think, I have to have this amazing story or people won't be engaged. And I've discovered that when you do all of that, your players will get hyper-focused on one thing, and you will never ever get to the thing that you have spent all this time putting together and hinging your whole plot on. The Avernus Goose Chase. Omega's now played that, and people watched us play it. The whole conceit is you have to get to Fort Knucklebone. You have to find this infernal goose. We had people wandering off to go get food and getting stuck on the car they were going to drive. And I'm just like, oh my God. And like what food they were going to eat in Avernus. And I'm just like, we have 3 hours. This is the time we have. Please go do what I need you to do. So now I do the least amount of prep possible, because I figure if we're truly collaborating, I as the DM can't railroad the story, and that's not fun for anyone. So it's like minimal prep. I have an idea of where we'd like to start, if we take a break, where we'd like to be by the break, and then hopefully where we'll end at if it's episodic. If it's a one shot, we get where we get. Oh well, as long as everyone had fun.
That's awesome. God, and I still love the fact that you did the Infernal Goose.
I just have to run you through it.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
I think on that note, it's really smart to prep as much as you want to, because prep is a private thing. It's a thing that will give you the confidence you need. Never feel like you have to prep a certain amount. Prep as much as you feel like you want to, but then you must be prepared to throw it all away when the rubber hits the road. There's no getting around it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. There was as many of you know, I used to run social skills groups for kids using D&D, and I still train clinicians on how to do that. But my co-facilitator for one group, who had a very different style than me, I would just show up similarly to you, James. I would have 3 beats I'd want to hit: a beginning, middle, and end, and anything goes in the middle, between those. And my co-facilitator at the time had so much planned out, and he had 12 single-space pages of story for this massive finale for this adventures he was leading the kids through, where they were going to battle the dwarven mafia in this city and all of this stuff. And one of the kids had a wish spell that we forgot that he had, and he pulled a Wanda Max. Pulled a Scarlet Witch and just said, "No more dwarven mafia." And the co-facilitator just looked at me like, because 12 more pages of story was just being skipped, and I was like, go with it. And it turned out to be so much fun. But the look on his face was so amazing.
Oh man.
Wow.
I feel sorry for him, but also
that's D&D.
That's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
But Omega, Mackenzie, you two are relatively new to DMing. What's been your experience in learning, getting into this? Simplicity, complexity, what's your bag?
So when I did that first one and I was like, no, never again. I went back to my own training as an actor. I'm a professional actor. Because I approach D&D that way, whether I'm playing or I'm trying to prepare something. And what I noticed, for me at least, I went back to whenever I'm getting notes from my director, and something that always sticks with me is sometimes doing too much on stage is truly too much. And the most subtle thing can be bigger than you think it is. So sometimes going simple is better. And when I say better, that doesn't mean it is the only thing to do, but I realized having those 1 or 2 beats that you really want to hit and focusing on those versus trying to make a whole coliseum of stuff, expecting them to go everywhere, like Tiny said and James said, it's not going to happen because this is D&D. When you want them to go to the dungeon with the Vorpal sword in there, they're going to go to the fun ball pit and play with a basilisk. So they're going to do that. Why? Because it's D&D. There's no explanation other than it's D&D, and they want to explore. So I definitely think that there's nothing wrong with having everything created in your mind, but if you can find ways to not just reel in, but have those, again, 1 or 2 beats that you really want hit, and have NPCs or whatever kind of lean towards those things and try to guide them in that direction, it could be better in the long run. It's a weird thing because you even with those small things you prepare, you never know what your players are going to do. So yeah, prep, like James said, prep is really good, but don't be surprised when you're ripping pages up, because that's going to happen 100%. But it's also good because prepping also helps you preparing helps you as a DM just as far as the creativity goes versus the actual implementation of it. That's not a word, but implementing it. I don't know. I definitely would. I tend to go towards more simplistic and actual doing it, but I'm really complicated in my head when I create it.
I have something I want to say, but I've talked a lot already, so I want to let everyone else talk before I yammer on some more.
Mackenzie, how about you? What do we, in simple, complicated, what do you like?
It's like, for me, I've done both, because I think my DMing style doesn't gear towards one or the other. It ends up being very flexible and it basically, I prefer to be able to mold my DMing style to what my players like. Because like when I've played D&D and I ran a one-on-one campaign for my partner, I went into it with very much like simplist, like bare minimum prep. I'm just sort of gonna go with the flow, and he stagnated with that. He was the kind of person who wanted the person at the beginning of the video game giving you the sword and go into the dungeon, please, because like he wanted that. He wanted that security of, I go here and then I do this and then I do this and then I do this. For him, the fear of unknown was really not trapping, but it prevented him from really opening up and exploring and having fun. And so for that, I went into a little bit more complicated, because he felt safer and more comfortable at the table with a slightly more open or more developed world, with that safety net to fall into, with that lore and those guide rails to sort of help him and push him along. And in that case, it's one of those things where a lot of people say railroading is bad, but for him, he preferred being slightly railroaded. He liked knowing where he was going and feeling like he was doing the right thing. And so for that, I tended to be a little bit more complicated and develop out the world lore a little bit. But then when I'm playing with some of my best friends, they hate being told what to do. And the minute you tell them what to do, they will do the exact opposite. And for them, approaching DMing for them in order to facilitate them having fun, I went fully hands off. I was like, okay, I've got a monster stat block in the Roll20. If they fight it, cool. I'd like for them to fight it after, like, our 1.5 hour break, because that'd be cool for because it's on stream and people like watching combat. But if they don't get to it, I mean, if they find looking at this cave painting far more interesting, or following this, these footsteps that I, offhandedly mentioned, or a chair, or a rug, or something along those lines. Chair, rug, door, random piece of furniture, and they will fixate on that, and I'll just be like, okay, yep, that's happening now. And those are the sessions I approach with less than simplicity. It's just more of a shrug. Let's see what happens. But that's what enables them to have fun and feel free to basically play. Because I always see the DM basically being like, not necessarily the facilitator, but basically like, you're the walls of the sandbox. You build the sandbox, you fill it with sand, you pop the plastic toys in, and you let them go. And sometimes people will prefer you put the instructions for building a sandcastle in the sandbox, and that helps them feel more comfortable and happy with their creation. And sometimes people will just prefer if you give them a shovel and say dig, and they will have the most fun digging their own tunnels and figuring out what they're doing in that sandbox on their own. And so that's kind of how I approach things, depending on what my players like.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I should take a moment to welcome everybody who's new to this chat. We are a bunch of fantastic DMs, writers, performers, giving some DM tips, but also raising money for Food Lifeline. And I found out that for every $1 that we can raise 5 meals are going to go to fight food scarcity, especially during this COVID-19 crisis. That the Food Lifeline, in Western Washington state alone, gives out 65,000 meals a week. So every dollar counts. We're up to $580 raised. If we can get past that $1,000 mark, Tanya has been kind enough to, if we can do that this hour in the next 23 minutes, we can she will be giving away some Rivals of Waterdeep D6s aluminium from Level Up Dice. But all of you now have talked about flexibility. How do you develop the confidence as a DM just to be flexible? Because that's a big thing I hear from first timers. Like, what if something goes wrong? What if something goes wrong? And meanwhile, I'm like, what do you mean if?
I mean, but that's let's take it out of the game and let's get to reality. Something will always go wrong in life. Nothing goes how you want it to go. You can plan it perfectly, but then you can walk down the street and then a car will drive by, hit you with some water, and now you're drenched. Like, it's going to happen. So for me, going into the game, I was like, this is not going to be exactly A, B, C, D, E. So again, it goes to that, have ideas in your head for if something does go off the rails. Don't be surprised if it goes off the rails. But you have to just understand that though, you are the stage manager and director, but you're also the scenic designer. You're also the understudy if something goes wrong. Like you just have those things prepared, because like it's weird to say it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Like it is almost like historically proven that it's going to happen, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. It just means your players have discovered something that you didn't think they would discover. Or more so, they thought about a path around this corner when you thought they would go down this straight line. And that's okay. You can still get them back to the road, but now you can have fun getting them back to the road. Like it's the story is ever growing and ever changing as you roll those dice. So enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, because it's going to be a bumpy one.
What about the rest of you? Like, how do you develop that confidence for especially for what would you say to new DMs?
I think it's often said a lot that becoming confident in improvising is a core skill for dungeon masters. But I think for people who have no experience doing like improv, that can be a kind of daunting thing to hear. Omega and I are both trained as actors. There's a lot of people who are big in D&D performance who are trained as actors, regardless of whether or not that's their full-time job now. It's not for me. But one thing that an actor learns when doing improv, you always hear yes and, right? Yes and is the king. You go with whatever they say and then you append something to it. That's very useful advice. If players give that, if players tell you they want to do something, don't clamp down on it unless it's, unless you think it's totally out of your ability to handle, but find a way to synthesize it into what you're doing. That said, when people tell you always yes and, you can find yourself spiraling out of control quite easily. And yes and is not the be all and end all of improvisation. All improv groups, whether they're short form, whether they're long form, whether they're just improv games or an actual improv show, they always have set boundaries. And those boundaries are crucial. Improvising with no boundaries is like playing in a sandbox with no walls. Like, to build up what Mackenzie said, then you're on a beach and you've got no idea what could be happening next. Some things you can do to restrain yourself, to give yourself the confidence to be able to say no to players without ruining fun, are things like, yes, but you can do this, but you may have to roll really well, or but you may have to pay some kind of cost, or but it may not be possible right this instant, you may have to do something first, are incredible tools for you to be able to tease your players with the ability for them to do what they want, but not quite right now. There's a goal in front of you that you may have to handle first. And just knowing that you are, one, not beholden to the whims of your players, and two, not the only person who's doing stuff at the table, is something that helped me feel very free when I'm DMing.
So you brought something up that I think is really important, and I know James D'Amato writes about the concept of yes and in one of his role-playing books, and James D'Amato has a just tremendous improv background. He talks about how yes and is often misunderstood. That it's not simply agreeing with everything and just going with it. It's just about accepting the premise as is. Does anybody can anybody explain that a little bit?
It's a big topic.
No, it's a huge topic. But
we could be here all day talking about that topic.
I mean, we've only got another hour and 15 minutes.
Okay. But like, so what other tips do you have for newbies?
Don't compare yourself to other DMs. And, you know, if Matt watches this and texts me later, I'll deal with it. But, you know, he has said himself, you don't have to be him. You don't have to be whatever DM you look up to, because we all started somewhere. The main thing is learn what your style is. Learn if you're more narrative driven, learn if you're more combat driven. What is it you like to do? And therefore, what experience will you bring to a table? Because I know I prefer to tell a story collaboratively. Yes, you can have your epic battle moments and everyone can go kill something. But every single session, if all you're doing is going through a dungeon, for me, that's going to be boring to DM and to me as a player. But, you know, watch what people do. Talk to other people who DM. But don't put yourself in this mindset of, if my game is not as epic as this show that I watch every week, or friends that I know have been DMing like 20 years and I'm never going to DM. And don't be afraid of it. So many people are simply afraid to even try. Get a pre-written module. You don't have to write a 800-page homebrew the very first time you DM either, because it will be terrible. I'm just going to tell you that now. It will be terrible, because as a DM, you haven't had a chance to learn balance and structure and everything else. Find a short pre-written thing, run it with friends, and have a session 0. If nothing else, because people didn't talk about session 0 when I started DMing. Talk about what's okay, what's not okay, what's a line, a veil. Go get the TTRPG safety kit. Shout out to Kiana and Lauren. And, you know, whether it's a one-shot, whether it's you plan to have a long-running campaign, learn how everyone likes to play and play to those strengths. And understand that constructive criticism is going to help everyone, yourself included, and be willing to get feedback from your players. Because you're going to make mistakes as a DM when you start. Everyone is.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm seeing a lot of people nodding, at least on this call, nodding their heads to the idea of session 0. And I know, Tanya, you wrote about this in the Monty Cook book, you know, Your Best Game Ever. I know several of you have spoken about session 0. I certainly have. Real simply, what is session 0?
It's just basically sitting down. It's like if we were going to have a game instead of this panel, whoever's DMing, or if I was DMing, what I like to do in this, you know, era of now doing everything virtually, sending an email going, okay, here's our setting, tell me, and Raphael, you actually had a very good form for this as well. No, it's good. You're laughing, but it's actually a really good thing, because sometimes people may not be able to verbalize or write out exactly what it is that's bothering them at a table, or something they absolutely don't want to deal with, or I'm okay up to this point. After this point, no, we got to stop. So either a form or just an email. Hey, we're going to be doing this game. I did it when I started the Dragon Age campaign IDM. You know, we're planning for 8 sessions. What are things that you're comfortable with, uncomfortable with, absolute deal breakers? And I planned accordingly, because there are things in the core material that would have actually trampled all over people's lines, veils, and triggers. So being cognizant of who's at the table and what's okay and what's not okay is your session 0. And also checking in after the fact, after each session, whether or not you can hang out virtually or in person, once we can do that, or by email, or whatever you do, especially if something really emotionally deep and rough to deal with. Check in with people. Say, are you okay? Do you need to take a break? Do you need to step away?
Go on, Omega. Go on.
Oh, real quick. To piggyback off of that, at the end of the day, you may not want to admit it, but the DM is, and I don't want to use the word leader of the table, but they are the ones that the players trust. They're the ones that get the ball rolling, get the game flowing. Oh, that rhymed. They're the ones who make sure this thing that you're doing called a campaign in a game is cohesive. So you have more power at your table than you probably realize. So having that session 0 to say, hey, this is the kind of thing I would like to do as a DM. This is the kind of game I'm looking forward to, but however, you are the ones playing this game. What are you not comfortable with? What are things that you're interested in doing? What are some things you're not interested in doing? You have to that session 0 is literally the session 0 before session 1. It's getting all of the information, filling the group, filling everything to make sure that the campaign or the one shot of whatever you do is comfortable, is safe, and but that also allows for that trust to build. Because I might know you at the beginning, but I don't know you as a DM. There are many people I've never played with, but we're really close in person. So it's going to be an entirely different experience, and making sure that you lay down exactly what this game could be and what you're comfortable with is important in the long run.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say?
I just wanted to kind of assuage some worries that if I were in the audience hearing this as a new DM, I might be feeling right now, because we're all talking about session 0 very seriously, because it can be a serious thing. If we're talking about things, it could be emotionally upsetting for people. You want to have that squared away right now. And if I were a new DM hearing this right now, I'd be like, but I want to have fun. I don't want to fill out an emotional questionnaire for my friends in high school. That doesn't seem like what would be good for me. And I want to encourage people that this is facilitating fun. And it doesn't have to be a huge full-page, 3-page questionnaire full of dots to fill in and blanks to write in. If your session 0 is 3 lines, what do you think is fun in D&D? What do you not think is fun in D&D? What movies do you like? That's a perfectly good session 0 set of talking points, and you can come back to it as many times as you want. Session 0 implies that it's only happening once before the game. You can have session 0 as many times as you want over the course of an entire campaign for 5 minutes before you start playing. Just a quick check, or after you've finished playing, just a check-in. How was that? Do we want to do something else? Do we want to try something new? Something like that. And it doesn't have to be formal. It can be as casual as you want it to be. And for D&D, which has so many layers of, it's a combat simulator, it's a dungeon exploring game, it can have emotional elements. You should try and figure out how emotional your game is going to be with a questionnaire like this, because not every D&D game is going to hit the same notes. That's why people have such long and extensive session 0 questionnaires sometimes, because they want to drill in exactly to what you want. If you feel it out over the course of a campaign, that's a perfectly good way of doing it too. So don't freak out about about session 0. It's awesome.
I mean, still valid.
Yeah.
So, I just hearkening back to something Mackenzie said, that really the session 0 doesn't have to be a big serious thing. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be like, when I used to have a psychology practice, just, and let's talk about how things are going right now. It doesn't have to be that. It can just be a fun, quick way of mutually discussing what are the frameworks. What are the frameworks for that sandbox? How do you get those boundaries around the sand? What toys do you want thrown? And that really was a great analogy, Mackenzie. That really was wonderful. I'm going to steal that and use it with liberty and give you credit every time.
Liberty.
Oh my god.
But one of the questions brought up from the chat, how do you do that for a one-shot?
I mean, go ahead, Mackenzie.
Yeah. So, I had to, well, I ran like a Westmarchers campaign, which for those who don't know what a Westmarchers campaign is, it's a campaign where you essentially have new players each session you go. So it's like, I'd have 2 players that stayed the entire time for the entire campaign, and then every session we'd had 2 new players who were there for the one shot and then left. And then the next week we'd have another 2 players who were there for the session and then left. And for that one, I did a session 0, but it wasn't like how a lot of people are describing session 0s and how a lot of people do describe session 0s as like a meeting where you all sit down, all the players kind of sit and talk about what they want or expect, or filling out those questionnaires, because it was a week off one-off thing, so we didn't have that time. But what I did was, because it's still really important to, even if it is a one-shot, to establish expectations, and figure out what people want out of the game. What I did was always just sort of, here is a little blurb about the setting. Here is the blurb about what your quest is probably going to be for the one shot. Is this okay? Do you have any questions? What do you want out of these 3 hours of gaming? And that was just kind of the hard and fast sort of blurb in there, and then I left it open for questions for them. Basically making sure I left that door for communication open, because especially for one-shots, there is that nervousness of approaching someone you may not know or you may not have played with, of like, oh, I don't want to cause any difficulties or cause any problems or anything like that. So just making sure that door is open to doing that and facilitating that sort of communication before game, as well as doing the check-ins like other people were saying at the very end of the game. Something I like to say whenever I finish running, whether it's a one-shot or a full campaign, is like, hi, I like to check in with my players after the game, so feel free to talk to me about anything that happened, good or bad, anything I might have overlooked. I had a lot of fun playing with y'all, and I hope you did too. And that's just sort of what I say at the end of every game. And again, leaving that door open for communication, because even if it's a one-shot and it's not a long, overarching, epic campaign arc of ye olde proportions, it's still the baseline is like, you want to make sure people have fun. And as long as the session 0, it's not like people are saying where it's a big, it doesn't have to be a big serious thing. Sometimes it's just, hey, what do you want out of this? This is kind of what I have in mind. What do you think? And sometimes that's enough.
So what I'm hearing from one of the things that it seems like y'all have been saying, when you've been talking about this, is that you seem to view being a DM with almost a service mentality. That you view DMing with it's your goal to ensure that your players have a good time. You're not there to be the fanciest, most snazzy, amazing DM possible. You want to ensure they have a good time.
Yeah,
am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, there are jokes to be made, but there's two goals when you're DMing, and different DMs will put more weight on one or the other. But my two goals when DMing are make sure my players are having a good time and make sure I'm having a good time. And those two things can sometimes kind of be at cross purposes, but most of the time they're meshed. I love it when my players are having fun, so the two are often linked. My players have a good time, I have a good time. But sometimes, like, give yourself permission as a DM to do something a little self-indulgent. Like, if that self-indulgence means that your players have a bad time, think about that and consider not doing that particular thing again. But you can't serve your players entirely unless you are having a good time also. Otherwise you'll burn out on DMing and you won't want to do it ever again. So make sure those two things are happening in every D&D session you do.
Yeah, fun, whether you are a DM or a player, your fun should never come at anyone else's expense around the table. That's just the standard blanket rule. I, like James said, I have a lot of fun when I see everyone else enjoying themselves, and that makes me super happy, knowing I can like create a story where people can, you know, have fun or get a break or laugh or have those epic emotional moments, and that makes me happy. But if there are certain goals you want to establish as a DM or you want to reach, that's totally fine, as long as that doesn't impede on your players. And again, it's like, as long as your fun doesn't come at the expense of anyone else around the table, just communicate, talk about it.
And yeah, to piggyback off of that, it's like, that's true in all ways. I mean, I go back to theater where, like, the director wants to do a show they really want to do, but at the end of the day, it's not their show, it's everyone's show. So whether you want to do this setting, you want to do it in space, or you want to do it with dinosaurs, if that's what's good for you, great. But it's still your responsibility to make sure that your players are also having fun. And as Mackenzie said, and as everyone has said, and we're going to continue to say, you don't get to have fun at the expense of your players. That's just hands down, because it goes back to, you still are the ones who are keeping the reins of this game, and you're the one making keeping the game flowing. So they trust you to make sure they're having a good time. So again, it's okay to have fun for yourself, but it's about all of y'all. It's not just about you. And you can do that very easily.
So how do you find that balance? How do you, it's, and where did, actually, let me pivot this a little bit. How much does DMing style and knowing your style play into this? I think it was James earlier who said, well, Tanya brought this up as well. There's no right way to run a game. You don't have to measure yourself up against any other DM. There's your way of doing it. One, how do you figure out what your style is so it can be enjoyable? And two, how much does that play in to the overall enjoyment of the table?
I know no one's going to want to hear this, but experience. Just, I mean, we know that people like instant answers. Honestly, it's experience, because until you kind of jump in the shallow end, go in the kiddie pool, you don't have to jump in like the 10 feet pool first time you DM, but it's just figuring out what you like, and and have an idea of, am I someone who has to have like, the table full of books and spreadsheets and everything else to prep a game, or are you someone who's like, I know the rules, I kind of know where I want them to go and where I want them to end, we're just going to run with it. And more probably, do you want to be more narrative, story driven? Do you want to just kind of see where the characters and everything winds up? Or do you have a very firm plan of combat? We're going to kill the big bad and we're going to go through 20 dungeons to get there. What is it that you enjoy? Because if you're not enjoying yourself as a DM, you're not going to provide an enjoyable experience for players, and everyone at the table will be able to tell. If you're being forced into some kind of, like if it's a one-shot and it's out of your control, and it's a charity thing, and it's not something you normally do, that's one thing. But if you want people to return to your table, watch your stream, do whatever, if you all aren't comfortable and you're not doing things the way that you enjoy and that they enjoy, and you communicate, I know we're going to wear the word out today, communicate.
Yeah.
That's your best way, experience and communication. Whether it be Slack, email, text, DM, however you talk to your players, do that. Like with Dungeon Crossing, the thing I just started with Gary Whitta, Brian Gray, Shannon Woodward, and Adam Nickerson. I sent a very long email after both sessions of, here's the things that everyone can kind of touch on, here are the things that will help, and not be crude about it, but it's like, this is constructive. The idea is to have fun. So
I would say 1,000% what Tanya just said. Experience is the greatest teacher. If you don't know what your DMing style is, learn from what you do yourself when you run games of D&D. Just like, pay attention to what you do. Think about what you do. It's easy to just do things and not think about them, but maybe take an active approach after each session or after your prep to think about, what did I just do? Why did that work for me? What didn't work for me? And I want to also add another option, because if you've never ran a game of D&D before, you might not even know where to start. And so if you have no starting point, how are you going to think about what you're doing anyway? If you watch actual play shows, if you watch Critical Role, it's okay to try to emulate Matt Mercer or emulate any DM that you watch on an actual play show, and you can figure out from there. Use that as a starting point, and don't compare yourselves to them, but use that as a jumping off point. And if you don't like actual play, valid. I rarely have time to sit through 4 hours of D&D when I could be playing D&D myself. Think about the movies you like. What do the movies you like do to make story happen, to make character interaction happen? What situations crop up in the books and movies and, I don't know, music, anything, any kind of media that you like? Why does it tick that box for you? So just be introspective about what you do and about the media you consume, and you will slowly find your options sliding right into a path that you can follow and branch out from occasionally.
Yeah, I think, I don't have the experience like Tanya and James do with having multiple years of DMing under their belts. For me, the biggest step, I'm still learning my style. That's just a given. I'm only about a year into DMing, and I'm still learning and figuring out what I like and what I don't like, and the things and the stories I like to tell. But I think for me, as a new DM, the biggest step for finding what my quote unquote style was I stopped trying to, I learned how to emulate without comparing. And I learned how to see what I liked in other people and not take that and go, oh, they did that so well, I can't do that well, so I'm not going to be a good DM. And I think that was the biggest step for me, was learning how to do that. I think there's a lot of like individual exceptionalism that comes with the idea of like, oh, this is my style. I know what I'm doing because this is my style. And I think it's okay if you don't know the answer to that yet. And it's okay if you don't know the answer to that for a very, very, very long time. As long as not knowing isn't a bad thing, and looking at other people isn't a bad thing. When it hampers you, and when you start looking at other people and emulating them with the presupposition that I'm emulating them because what I do myself isn't good, that's when you start falling into that pit of self-deprecation, and that doesn't help you get really anywhere. So to bounce off what everyone had said, it's good to emulate and figure out what you like, but never do that with the supposition that, oh, I'm emulating this because what I do or what I like to do isn't good because this is better. And I think that's one of the key steps into developing a style.
So, and this brings up, no, I'm sorry, please,
no,
please jump in. Well, this has been brought up in the chat already. Someone said, I just don't feel like my style would be appreciated. And in my experience, you want to take this away, Omega?
That's actually where I was going to go, and not necessarily on what they said, but that's where I was going. I think there's also a misconception that if you do something and your players don't latch onto it or don't like it, that it's wrong. And that's not necessarily true. You just don't have styles that match. We're all different in this panel right now. We literally, none of us are the same, but that doesn't make one good and make one bad. That just makes us different. And you don't always click with everyone that you know out there. I can tell you right now, I have a lot of followers on Twitter. I don't know half of them. And then the ones I do know, I don't click with those. I don't click with half of those people, so it's like, and that's okay. It makes you you. So you're going to find sometimes that once you get to the point of figuring out what your DM style is, because like Mackenzie, I don't know my DM style completely. I have an idea of what I like, and I have an idea of what I've noticed that works for me. But what works for me might not work for, player A, B, and C. It might work for D, but it might not work for them. And it's not saying that they're wrong, and it's not saying that you're wrong. It's just saying you all don't mesh. Mm-hmm. You're going to find a lot of the time people don't mesh with your style. But once you find the ones that do, then that's you're creating those relationships, and you're creating something nice. Because I don't know how many people Tanya and James have DM'd for, but I doubt it's in the hundreds. And if it is, go you. It might be. But I mean, like, you still, you can't DM for everyone. So learn that it's okay not to mesh with somebody. Mm-hmm. It's not saying that you're doing something wrong. It's just saying, this is what I would like to go towards. And piggybacking off Tanya, there might be someone who wants to DM a game that's about exploration and finding out more about the world, but then you have a group of murder hobos who just want to kill the aboleth. They're not wrong, but you're not wrong either. Mm-hmm. So talk, communicate. And if you find that you still can't come to an agreement, then it's okay to part ways and find another group, or it's okay for them to part ways and find another DM. That's life. So just know that you're never necessarily wrong. It's just sometimes it's oil and water. It don't mix unless it's mayonnaise. Yeah. And not many people like mayonnaise. So it's fine too. So it's do what you gotta do.
I'm gonna step in here and defend mayonnaise. We call it aioli. Flavor that. You call it a French word and suddenly it's classy, and you put a little garlic and chipotle in that thing. It's delicious.
Yeah, I mean, sort of bounce. Oh, sorry.
Oh, this will be quick. I'll get back to you in a sec. Your first parting of a D&D group, especially if it, comes mutually when you say our style just isn't clicking. it will be emotional. Like you may feel like you've done something wrong, but you haven't. You're you. You like what you like. They like what they like. Don't tamp down on those emotions. Like, acknowledge them, be okay with them, but don't hang on to them. You'll find another D&D group. You will.
Kind of was going to bounce off what I was going to say, is that, like, even if your style's, like, they may not like your style, that doesn't mean they don't like you, and that's a very big distinction. It sort of bounces off to just creating in general. People may not like the things you create because it just doesn't match their taste, but you know, that doesn't mean they like your if you DM for a group of friends and it doesn't mesh, that doesn't mean like your friends don't like you. It just means, oh, you have a different style. Like I've run into that with like my partner, who I love outside of D&D, but I struggle a little bit with meshing with the style, and we've had to talk about it and be like, I don't like the way you run dungeons because I don't like that linear feeling, and that's fine. Like, it's just something that happens, and you just gotta be open about it.
This can be challenging if D&D is your main source of socialization entertainment. During the pandemic, that might be true. During my normal life, when I was in high school, that was true. And so those emotions were all amplified big time. If you love those players that you didn't click with in D&D and you want to spend more time with them, figure out something else you can do. Watch movies over Zoom or Discord or whatever during the pandemic. Reach out to them in another way.
So there's an underlying thing here about, and this is, I suspect that this is something we all had to learn or will have to learn somewhere along the way, and that's not treating these things as not a personal matter. This is not something to take personally that your styles aren't meshing. Like me, I know that I basically rip off Terry Pratchett and Mel Brooks in vaudeville. And if that's not your jam as a D&D player, then we're probably not gonna mesh. And that's cool. That's fine. You go do you. But that's a hard thing to learn. Like, how did you all come to learn that?
I mean, for me, I'm gonna be the quick and easy one. I'm an actor. I don't mess with every director. I don't mess with every fellow actor. You're gonna find that you want to do something this way in a scene, and then this person goes, I don't like that, and we're gonna go, okay, can we figure it out? And if you can't, that's life. So it goes back to, one, not taking things personally. And I know a lot of people put a lot of emotion into the games that they run or play. And while that's valid, and that's fine, it's okay to separate yourself, your personal self, from the game for 2 seconds, to put on that, that director's DM hat, and just say, okay, this isn't working, this isn't meshing, let me come over here. That is a-okay. You have that ability and that agency to say, it's okay, I'm going over here. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for everyone. I also understand that I have really thick skin. I don't let a lot of things get to me. So when someone says they don't like me, I don't like something I do, I'll go, oh, okay, that's fine. Quack. Like, I'm not, I'm not really pressed about it. But I understand that I'm not like everybody. I get that some people can't do that.
How many of those do you have within reach, by the way?
2 right now. But
I aspire to be that, have that kind of attitude in everything. My God.
But still, it's just I get that I am a certain person, but just with that being said, not everything's an attack on you, and just I truly do try to find a way to separate the personal from the professional, and it's going to help in the long run.
I'm the opposite of that way. I'm naturally a person who takes things very personally. I put a lot of myself into everything I do, and when someone doesn't like that thing I do, my first mental reaction really truly is, oh, they don't like me. because I'm so attached to what I do. And you know, I had training as an actor. I've written for 5+ years now. It's taken a lot of hard work, honestly, to get myself to the point where I don't take it so personally. And it's an active thing. It's not just you get there and suddenly you've leveled up and you're immune to that sort of emotional damage anymore. You have to deal with it yourself. And you know, I'm sure people listening today, there's going to be a mix of all types of people, like me and like Omega and somewhere in between. And you just gotta know yourself. You just gotta think about yourself and figure it out.
Okay, so this is a question I see all the time, or debates I see. Well, debates is being kind, given it's an internet forum. This is a conflict that I see all the time in various tabletop RPG forums, and that is rules as written or whatever. I know which camp I'm in because I couldn't quote you most rules to save my life. I couldn't quote you most lore to save my life. I know so little about D&D actual mythos. It's laughable. So how do y'all do it?
I'm gonna go last. I think my opinion will be very different from everyone else's.
Well, you also write this for a living,
Right,
so
you do.
That's exactly it. I want to hear everyone else first.
James, I'm in the same camp though. I'm like, we write this for a living. We have to know the
I'll go
rules.
first gladly.
Yeah.
And again, I'm the youngest. I'm not the youngest, but I'm the least amount of. I have the least amount of DM experience, but I've been playing for a while, and I think for me, I think there are some things that are obvious. What I mean by that is, let's see. Let me think of something that's just base and just there. Wow, you know, when you want to think of something, then nothing comes to mind. I guess what I'm saying is there are some rules like how do spells work, or that are a little more concrete, or how mechanics work, or you know that you have to rage in order to get blood. You know, some of these things just make sense. Versus, hey, I see this person and I want to convince them of blank. You know, those things you could be a little more lenient on. I think about this one. I had this happen in a campaign recently, in a game recently, and I was like, cool, I like that. Lockpicking. Most lockpicking requires thieves' tools or whatever, or do a dex check or a sleight of hand check or whatever to pick the lock. Well, I had a player say, well, I mean, I'm not a rogue, but let me shape water, let me freeze it inside the lock. Will that expand it and open it? And I'm like, well, it could. I'm not against that. That's where you can kind of be a more, have fun. If you want to be completely, you need to be someone who actually knows and understands the inner pickings of a lock system. That's fine. But also, water, when frozen, will expand and it will make it potentially easier to open. So it's like, it's okay. I like having fun, because for me that allows for a not better, but just a more realized game for me personally. Because again, no one's gonna do everything the same, but also there are just some things that are what they are. Another thing, and I've gotten into a lot of arguments about it, is taking a potion. By rules, taking a potion is an action. For me, I'm like, that took less than 6 seconds. Why is that an action?
Okay, but this is a plastic bottle with a screw top. Ye old potion. You gotta get the wax seal off, get the cork out. Like, have you ever tried to open something that has a cork? Okay, you, sir. That was already open.
My favorite
I got another one right here.
My favorite comment about the potion action economy was from was Dan Dillon at Gen Con last year, where he was just like, it takes an action. It's like this much. What is it? A Jello shot?
Well, yeah. Are your potions little Witcher tinctures like this, or you just, or is it a big like olive oil bottle of red Kool-Aid? You know, that's a legit question.
But I think that question is the perfect. That for me is a deciding. Do I think that makes sense as an action? If I do, that's valid. That's fine. But if I look at it and say, it shouldn't take that much. Because there's also different type of potions. And I personally think like a normal healing potion is probably like a Jello shot or something. Not really, but small. But then like a superior is probably a whole steak and shake thing. You know, you got to down it. So like, I mean, I think there are different...
How many props do you have, CB?
Do you really want... I got a dice bag that's going to be... No. But
the actor is always prepared.
Super glue can be... But you know, just...
if this is what we're doing, is it this size? Is it like this size?
Right, but I mean, whatever your answer is, I'm not saying it defines whether you're raw versus having fun, but it's a good way. You start thinking about that. Start thinking about those ones that you start to wonder, and then go from there. Because neither way is wrong. It's just how you want to play. I personally like to have fun, though. So, I mean,
yeah. I mean,
I'm definitely in that camp, too.
Oh, it's hilarious. So, like, for Dragon Age, our friend the Opera Geek, I don't know if she's still in the chat, Kelly, has never played the Dragon Age games. So there's a lot of fun to be had with things that the rest of us may know because we're big nerds and have played the games forever. And, I'm a walking lore encyclopedia for Thetis. And so I'm running with that and using that as the DM, but if she says, oh, can I do a thing? And instead of me going, no, that's not in the lore, you cannot do it, according to the chantry, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I know you haven't played the game, so let's have fun with it. What is it you would like to do? And it probably shouldn't work, but you know what? No one from BioWare is going to pop up in the chat, I hope, and go, that's not right. That's not lore appropriate. And if they did, I would probably just still go, okay, whatever, leave me alone. Like today. I wasn't the DM, but we were playing in Dishonored. My character had a bone charm, and it gave me Void Step. Basically, I could walk undetected. Someone was carrying me because I was faking being dead. And so, I would have normally not rolled, but I was like, hold on. This person's carrying me. I'm wearing the bone charm. Shouldn't that affect transmute to them? Because they're carrying me, and so they're effectively wearing a bone charm. And the DM was just like, sure, I'll allow it, because why not? So things like that where you're just like, you know what? Run with it, because it can make for something where you can give characters inspiration for thinking up something truly, like, out-the-box thinking. And, as everyone has said, those rule books that we spend all that money on, those are guides. We do not have to know it, page 1 to page whatever, index, appendix. Because Sharif Jackson, who is our current DM for Rivals, was like, I was afraid to play or DM because it felt like I had to know every single rule. I will never know every single rule in any book that you give me. I don't care how good my memory is or is not. Because even as a paladin, things have changed so much. People are like, oh, you can do this. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. I will look it up in the rule book or D&D Beyond. No one should have to feel like they need a photographic memory to play this game or run a game.
Well, and that's where that's what part of the reason I dig the sort of flexible rule of cool, and I want to spend my time telling the story, not looking up rules. And this is actually part of the reason that I prefer certain games over others. That's part of the reason I love D&D 5th edition, as opposed to something a little bit rules crunchier like 3.5 or GURPS or God, I mean, with 3 rule books just to start for GURPS, I'm like, cool. Those of you who enjoyed that, good on you. I'd rather just tell a story. And if someone says I'm kicking the lock by putting my full booted greave, my full armored boot through it, cool. That's awesome. But, Tanya, you mentioned that, you don't need to have an encyclopedic knowledge of this to run things. But what about those of you who are paid to have an encyclopedic knowledge and write about these things? What's your take on DMing rules as written?
That's why I have electronic things at hand, or the book literally under my hand every week I play Dragon Age. Because the book for... I can't go grab it because it's way across the room. The book for Dragon Age is this thick. I didn't have to memorize books that thick in college. I don't care how much you pay me. I will have notes. I will bookmark where rules are that I need for that session. I can know it, but if that is an unrealistic expectation of anyone. And I, as far as I know, have no learning disabilities, but I know I have a terrible memory. But what if you get into someone with cognitive abilities or disabilities, or, just ADHD or anything like that, where memory focus is going to be a thing that is difficult. So, like if I pay you, Raphael, to DM a game or something, that would be patently unfair, or me, or anyone on this panel, or anyone watching, to be like, you must know every rule in the player's handbook, editions 1 through 5e. That's ridiculous.
Not gonna. Well, and you bring up accessibility issues. I'm very public about my autism, and part of my autism is I have a working memory issue, and technically I do have a working memory issue and a processing speed issue by comparison to some other cognitive abilities, and I am not going to be able to remember all that stuff. I don't remember what all the spells do. My players know it's your responsibility to know what your character is doing. I'm spending all of my data trying to run the game. I could not do that if you paid me, Tanya.
No, and people have paid me well on occasion to do things, and you know what? Again, the Dragon Age game is totally for fun. It's not for pay. It's not for anything. It's not even on my channel. So that book is always in reach, or the PDF is up on another monitor. And even when I DM, the one shot I DM'd for Rivals, the D&D Beyond was there, and I had things bookmarked. So.
I still want to know what Mackenzie and James are.
Yeah.
There, because
what you think, Mackenzie.
Like we said, they are literal designers for D&D in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I want to see what they think.
So here's my my not so secret as a professional writer for D&D. I don't know the rules of D&D that well either. You're talking about cognitive processing, and that's something I realize I struggle with. Like, for someone who is a professional writer, I can't read for garbage. I struggle with reading so much.
Oh no.
Oh no. No.
Lost her.
No.
And what happened was the D&D god said, "You're not allowed to say anything. Keep our secrets."
Oh no. Is this Wolf in action?
Vecna came in and said, "Nope."
Oh dear.
Oh no.
Well, if she doesn't come back in a couple of seconds, I will chime in, but...
Like, you give me, like, I...
Okay.
Hell!
You froze!
I could hear you! I could hear you all, and I was just like, what happened? What happened?
You just froze.
Oh my god, okay. Okay,
Cast hold person on you.
Yeah, I'm not okay, my secret was, it was too hot of a take, man. I just...
It's too spicy.
Too spicy. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I guess that was too spicy for to reveal. But yeah, I don't. As someone who is a professional game designer, I have a very not great grasp on the D&D rules. I constantly have to look up things, and that's like fine. And I know my mindset as a writer is very different than when I'm DMing. When I'm writing for things and I'm writing to like make modules or subclasses, the whole point of like making those mechanics is to make them as clean and as easy as possible for them to understand what's going on and to understand the story they want to tell, but also leaving gaps for them to fill in their own things. And that's sort of how I approach DMing, is like, again, leaving gaps for people to approach their own things. But when it comes to like rules and DMing, it's one of those things where I know I always say, like, I just sort of do what my players like, which is, makes me sound like a little bit of a doormat. But when it comes to rules, and people ask me, like, what are your rules for this? And they ask me that, and you can sort of tell by the situation. It's like, what are your rules for potions? And you can tell with the smile on their face, they're like, please let it be a bonus action because I want to do something. And then I make it a bonus action because it's like, I don't want to crush their hopes and dreams, man. I don't want to do that. And same thing when it's like, can I do this with the spell? And I'm like, well, if you read it as written and you're really stringent about it, no, you cannot launch your reduced friend with catapult, technically. But you sound really excited about it. And so we'll figure out a way to make this work together in a way that still isn't me just letting you go willy-nilly screw the dice, but is also like, you know, allows you to have fun. And I think that's kind of where I fall, where it's like I do adhere to the rules. I'm a game designer. It's always putting around in my brain, but a lot of it is rules but exceptions, I guess is how I approach things. Rules but exceptions, which I know some people are like, I'm not gonna listen to the dice whatsoever, and I love playing with people like that too. But it's for me, and I guess it does come from being a writer for this sort of thing. That's how I balance it. And now I'll shut up before my spicy takes break the stream.
It's okay. Just really quick, we are gonna draw for the dice in a moment, and then we've got some giveaways during our half hour of planned Q&A. And quick question, when we do hit the 2-hour mark, are people okay if we go a little over? Are people like, oh no, I have to leave, I'll turn to dust?
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here. Let's chat.
I'm just checking, because, you know, some other people like, I like y'all, I gotta go.
I'm just letting you know right now, I am ordering some seafood, so...
if we do go over, you may get munchy.
So, Omega, if
you
clam up after that shows, then...
James, get out!
What?
But while we're at a pause, I want to update everybody that thank you to all your generosity. We've raised thus far $1,070 of our $1,000 goal for the Food Lifeline to help fight food scarcity during, you know, the COVID-19 crisis. And I'm gonna say, what can we over the next half an hour, do you think it's too much to get to $2,000? We got 155 people watching right now. If everybody's able to give $10 even, every dollar helps. Can we do $2,000?
Look, and I offered to do something at 1,500.
What are you gonna do 1,500?
At 1,500, your boy does have a collaboration with Die Hard Dice, the Forte dice, if it'll zoom in. It probably won't, but it's very pretty. Stop looking at my face. It is very pretty.
It's too close. It's too close.
It's a demon. That's what it is.
Oh,
they're gorgeous.
Beautiful.
They are purpley, opalescent, having fun, and they come in silver or gold ink. And if we get to 1500, I will give away a set of those.
All right, chat, can we make that happen? And I would love to see us hit that $2,000 mark, because every dollar given is going to provide 5 meals. We've raised over 5,000 meals so far in the last 90 minutes. Let's see if we can bring it up to 10,000 meals in the next half an hour. $2,000.
Hey, Native Use, you're in the chat. You have won D6s.
Yeah, they replied to us. Yeah.
So
That's
I'm going to
amazing.
send you a whisper. It's my email. And sorry about all the typing noises, but I got one microphone and it's right over my keyboard. So
Can I talk while you're typing, Tanya?
Of course.
So my situation is perhaps somewhat exceptional. You may find that what I'm about to say doesn't apply to you in the slightest, but maybe you can find something that resonates with you anyway. I am paid to write rules precisely, very precisely as possible, 3 times a week, if not more. Otherwise, one of 2 people will get on my case, either the person who's paying me or the people who are reading, because that's the way the internet is. You got the opportunity attack rules wrong. Anyway.
And sometimes James is the person getting on me for getting the rules wrong. I've been in that position.
I like to think I do it a little bit more nicely than the average internet rando, though.
You are very nice about it, but that has happened.
Yes.
You are paid to know this stuff.
Yes. So that's my baseline as a professional, is that I need to know this stuff backwards and forwards. But there's this man named Jeremy Crawford. He's the managing editor of Dungeons and Dragons at Wizards of the Coast. And I did a design test with him once. And he told me a piece of information that anyone who writes anything for D&D, whether it's DM's Guild, third party, official, whatever, even just for your notes, is always design with a rulebook in front of you. It's not a closed book test. If you need to know a rule, look it up. I don't have all the 5th edition rules memorized. I have a fair bit of it memorized, but I don't have all of it. I don't need to. The time when it's most useful for me is just for speed of design, but even then I'm going back and checking my work anyway. So that's me as a professional. As a dungeon master who plays off stream, who has no interest in having this be a game for public consumption, a game that teaches people how to play D&D, much like the Critical Role folks, they're often people's first entry point to D&D, so they like to be kind of tight about their rules. I still like to be tight about my rules when I play D&D. I know the rules well enough that I know their purpose. I know why certain rules are in there. I know why you can't cast 2 spells of first level or higher in the same turn as an action and a bonus action. I know why that restriction is there. And I do my best to adhere by it because I think it makes my game better. That's particularly for general case rules, broad rules. When it comes to spells, I often like to adhere pretty strongly to the letter of the law there too, but I have been known to bend it for the purpose of a sort of realism, for the purpose of fun, for the purpose of a plan made by someone perhaps that didn't read the spell fully, but it wouldn't be overpowered if I allowed them to get away with something. Let's take an example in a game that I ran yesterday. Actually, my game yesterday had an awesome scenario where my party was in a swamp. They had just killed a black dragon and severed its head. And this dragon was being aided by 3 gray renders. My party was level 6. Every single one of those gray renders was CR 12. This was not a fight they were supposed to win. This was a fight that, in my mind, they were supposed to get the head and get the hell out of Dodge. These gray renders are not smart. They're intelligence 3 or something. They're stupid. They can be tricked. They can be bamboozled. You can make a creative use of whatever you can. It's just there are alternatives to fighting. And so their awesome plan was my party Artificer and the party Cleric had this really cool 1-2 combo of Fog Cloud and Levitate, where they would drop a Fog Cloud around, or they would levitate the head, and then as the head was levitating out of the marsh, they would drop a Fog Cloud so the Grey Renders would not see the head of the dragon moving. Super cool. Meanwhile, our Barbarian/Rogue multi-class wild guy was taking quarter damage from everything because he was raging and uncanny dodging all of these Grey Renders attacks. So he was taking all of the brunt of like these 3 CR 12 monsters while the party was trying to shuffle off with this severed head. Now here's the problem with that plan. Levitate does not allow you to move things laterally. You can move them up, you can't move them anywhere else. I hate that. I think Levitate would be a much cooler spell if you could just float things away, particularly Mind Flayers. I love Mind Flayers. They can float up with Levitate. They're supposed to be like these cool guys sliding across the ground, feet never touching. What, they can just go up? That noise. So,
get out of here with that David Blaine stuff.
Yeah. So the characters obviously had a plan where they would do something very cool, very synergistic together, and they would get the head out of there by sort of pushing it across the ground unseen. But the text of the spell wouldn't allow it. I wasn't about to rain on their parade by being, well, actually, you can't do that with the spell Levitate. No. So I let their spell get off. They used a lot of resources. It was fun. Everyone had a great time. I let them know I was bending the rules because they've come to expect that from me. But I let them know why, and I let them know that I didn't feel like I was giving them an unfair edge by letting it happen. So I think that's a great case study of what I'm like when it comes to following the rules as written.
I think you also brought up something really interesting where you mentioned like your game isn't on stream and it's not intended for consumption by anyone else, and it's just for you and your group. I've had the interesting experience of almost all of my DMing journey was on stream, and it's been on stream. So I mean, it's all my learning is recorded on the internet for everyone to see. Wahoo! But the other thing,
I couldn't take that.
I have regrets. But here we are. there is something interesting about like the idea that when you're doing something on stream, how you treat rules on stream, it is that precedent. You're setting that precedent for like, if people watch your stream, you're setting a precedent on how you handle rules, and you have to be conscious of that. And that's something I've come to learn and come to just sort of internalize for me, and that's why I sort of approach things. And it sort of bounces on, I know we have a question from chat where it's like, what's your take on fudging dice rules? Rules and dice rules. And for me, because I've done things on stream, like we'd have a Roll20 chat window and I literally couldn't fudge dice rolls, but there would be times where I would realize an encounter like on the fly was gonna end way quicker than I wanted, and it wasn't gonna fit the cinematic story beat that people were expecting. And so I'd like fudge some of that on the fly because it was a streamed encounter, and I had to remember, you know, that performative aspect of play. But that's not something that most people who are going to start DMing will have to consider. That is something unique to my experience of learning how to DM primarily on stream, and that is something I've just sort of taken in mind. Yeah. I know for other people that's going to be very different, and I also know how people approach DMing on stream is very different than mine. So, I mean, it is very different though when you know people might be watching your show or watching you DM and using that as a template, and it puts a little bit more pressure on how you DM and how you treat things, because people, whether you like it or not, will be like, I liked how that is and I'm going to go use it now, and you're going to be like, wait, no, I didn't mean, okay, well, too late.
So first of all, thank you all so much for being here so far. We've still got at least 20 more minutes of the show left. But I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. So far, we have raised $1,510 to fight hunger and food scarcity during COVID-19, thanks to Food Lifeline. And I'm still wondering, can we hit that $2,000 mark?
2,000 or bust.
Yeah, CB, you're giving away some dice.
Yep, officially
giving away some dice.
So we're gonna have to go over just to accommodate all these giveaways. You realize?
My goodness, yeah, we are gonna have to go a little over. What? But you know what? I mentioned this semi-jokingly before, but I think if we go over 2,000, I will give away one of my dice ties. This is my newest acquisition from Dapper on arrival, my red polyhedral dice bow tie.
I'm gonna have to enter that because that's pretty. No. Look, I love ties. I wear ties all day.
This is one of my dice bow ties. But I will give it, if we can hit $2,000 in the next 20 minutes. We got $475 to go. I will give away my newest red polyhedral dice bow tie.
That's so pretty.
That's incredible.
Shout out to Dapper on arrival for that. Their Etsy shop's amazing. I'm about to have some custom ties done.
Do we want to try to get some of these questions in?
Yeah, I think we should. We got some great questions from the chat. Let me go up and see what we haven't answered already, because I think a couple of them...
They're in our chat in Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you again, Tanya, for all the fantastic production, back-end support. It's been amazing, and I can't say thank you enough.
I will quickly say, though, because, people are going to be nice, and I'm not. We will try our best to get to every question. It might not happen, but just know we thank you for asking them to begin with. They do all matter. But we have a list, and we're going to try to hit them as we can.
Yes.
And one of the things I want to remind everybody is that at the top, at the 2 o'clock mark, we are going to be giving away a D&D Beyond Legendary Bundle worth $688, thanks to generosity from D&D Beyond, who donated it to this event. And we got a couple more giveaways coming. Burn Bright pack from Roll20, another starter kit.
What's that? That is the current giveaway that is about to be drawn in 40 seconds.
Awesome.
If you haven't entered the Burn Bright giveaway, I gotta sell you on Burn Bright really quick. It's made by my pal James Intracasa. We wrote Waterdeep Dragon Heist together along with a bunch of other stuff. It's science fantasy. It's an awesome system built like specifically to run with Roll20. I play tested the thing years ago. This system kicks butt. You gotta play it. Even if you don't win this bundle.
Intracasso. I'm also here to hype up that he's amazing. I haven't gotten a chance to check out Burn Bright, but like pretty much almost everything Intracasso does is just so.
It's a system that you can play either a giant mecha or a corpse slug or a human, or the aliens in this science fantasy setting are wild.
I'm picking this up.
Just for that alone, you gotta check it out. The corpse slugs, guys. The corpse slugs.
I don't like how excited you were about saying those two words together.
Sassy Boy, you were a little too late, sorry. I just pulled a winner. Millie Glitch, if you were in chat, please speak up. You all have missed the giveaway, sorry. It is not open. All right,
well,
Millie.
We're gonna have other giveaways, though. We've got more coming.
Millie, or not Millie. Raphael, how should people claim their giveaway?
If they're go ahead and DM me directly on Twitch, or I can if you're having trouble there, I will give out my email address, my business address later, and y'all can email me to claim your stuff. Let's look at some of the questions that we have. It looks like we've answered a couple of them already. Inadvertently. Session 0, rules as written. And let's see, fudging dice as a DM. We kind of talked about that. So let's go down to what's the hardest part of DMing for all y'all? Can I jump in and say this?
It's all hard. I'm just kidding.
Well, can I kick this one off?
Yeah, sure.
You know, and this is something that I think a lot of folks overlook, and I want to say this as someone who is literally trained in human behavior. Managing interpersonal needs at the table is probably the most challenging part, and the part that not enough people talk about. People talk about running the game, people talk about pacing for the game, people talk about being creative and how to fudge dice rules and everything, but keeping everybody getting along and happy and working out those conflicts that will inevitably occur in any long-term relationship. That's the hardest part for me, because it's always new, it's always a little different, and I'm very thankful that I have so much experience working with people, but yeah, that is the trickiest part, because you think, we joke about players surprising us with what they come up with in game. I trained for thousands of hours getting my clinical psych doctorate degree, and people still tend to surprise me with what they're going to beef about. That's the hardest part for me. What about the rest of y'all?
Preparation, and for me, and I don't know if this sounds silly or not, but I always worry that people are bored, or that if they're having a good time. I'm always terrified that I'm a terrible storyteller and people are incredibly bored.
So self-doubt is the hardest part for you?
Self-doubt, and then sometimes knowing system, like I know Dragon Age lore inside and out, but the system is still a struggle to me. Like the 3d6 system, I don't know off the top of my head what it's based off of, was a struggle, because I'm so used to D20 systems, where I'm like, 3 6-sided dice, what do I do with this? And so every time there's combat or something, so you'll notice there's not a lot of rolling that happens in the Dragon Age game. But when we did have combat, I had a cheat sheet of combat that I sent the players and had up for myself.
I think for me, especially because I'm still a new DM, and I know the game pretty well, specifically D&D. I know D&D pretty well. I know how to be creative in D&D. I know how everything works. But for me, and y'all know, I am super extroverted. I can have a good time. I'm the first person to say hello. But for some reason, actually getting the confidence to want to DM is one of the scariest things for me. Like the preparation, all this stuff's fine. It's actually, okay, I'm about to start this. Ho. Because now it's on me. It's on me to make sure this game is smooth and going well, and making sure that everyone's having a good time, and making sure I have my P's and Q's ready. I have my ducks in a row ready, whether that's actual preparation or just knowing what to do next. It's scary. It is super scary to make yourself do that. Not even make yourself, but like have the confidence to be that person behind that screen and say, hello friends, let's play a game. And I think just finding that joy and finding that passion and realizing why I'm doing it versus the, okay, I'm about to do this, that's helped me get over that fear, get over that worry that I'm not going to be good, or I'm not going to do it correctly, I'm not going to be good enough. Yeah, I think it's the hurdle, the initial hurdle to starting, that's the hardest for me.
So getting started. So we've heard self-doubt, interpersonal conflict, getting started. What else? What's the hardest
so
part?
far I've talked about kind of big picture issues, emotional stuff, player stuff. Mine is very specific. I hate cities. I hate players show up in a new city in my campaigns, and it's entirely to do with my DMing style. Because when I start a campaign, over the first 4 weeks, maybe, I will mastermind the entire lore of my world and the personalities and relationships of my major NPCs and factions. And I will know that like bedrock, and then I will not do like no prep for the rest of the campaign, because I know that with all that information solid in my head, I can improvise just about anything I'll need, except cities. Because cities have a million things in it. There are a dozen NPCs I haven't thought of. There are street stands and buildings and governments and tourist attractions, and it's like, that requires so much prep. You need to do so much work to get all those fine fiddly little details in there, and it's time I don't want to spend on things like that, because I care about character interactions and broad stories and emotional stuff. I don't have it in me to spend an hour before my game thinking about all the various places they can go when they get to Talim's Court or wherever they're going. So I just kind of hope and pray that I'll be able to find a map on Dice and Logos website. I'll be able to pull it up, drop it in my Discord chat, and I'll be able to wing various government buildings or, you know, wherever they want to go, just based on evocative features from the map that I chose. And sometimes it works. Last session it worked for me, but sometimes it doesn't. 4 sessions ago I had a terrible city encounter by my standards. So you just got to take the good with the bad.
James, on that note, my personal style of utter whimsy and chaotic whatever plays really well in for that. About 5-6 years ago, I've told the story many times, but about 5-6 years ago, one of the groups I was working with, the teenagers, they went into this new city I didn't plan on them doing, and they asked, well, what's it called? And I, of course, had nothing planned, and I just went, it's the kingdom of... And they're like, I'm sorry, what was that? I'm like, you heard me. You heard me. Yeah, it's the kingdom of... How's that spelled? Lots of consonants. Who's running it? King God. Bob. King Bob. Yeah, King Bob. Yeah, here we go. King Bob. And they just, the spontaneity and the ridiculousness of it, they loved so much they never wanted to leave. Mm-hmm. Everything was topsy-turvy in the kingdom of... And King Bob turned out to be basically me ripping off William J. Lepedimane from Blazing Saddles.
Nice.
Amazing.
But, so let's see. Mackenzie, did you... I don't want to skip over you.
I guess for me, it's like, for the hardest part for DMing for me, it's specific, but it's mostly because it's specific to me. Part of my disability is like, I can't read facial expressions really well. I also can't understand spoken tone really well. So when it comes to DMing, I essentially, my brain does a cross-reference. It goes into like a full-on matrix cross-referencing, look at someone's expression, try and cross-reference it with what they're saying and how they're saying it, and try and figure out that's how they're feeling. And that's the hardest part for me, because my brain just can't process that, and that's so hard. And that's the hardest part for me. I've figured out ways around it. A lot of times it's just checking in with my players and just asking them directly, hey, everything good? But that's the hardest part for me. And not to mention people saying like, oh, you can't DM because, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, screw you. But that's a whole nother conversation, because like you can't DM because you don't know how to socialize. And I'm just like, okay, I don't have time for that. That's a different story altogether. But for me personally, that's my biggest issue, is trying to figure out how to DM while also just figuring out how to do it with how my brain works. Like, I can't do maps. Visual things don't work for me, so I can't do it. Same thing with like trying to figure out reading expressions when people say like, oh, you need to read the room as a DM. Some people we genuinely can't do that. And that's hard. That's a really difficult part. Just more of learning how to deal with that. That's about it.
Well, I think you and I might need to do another chat at some point about how to read the room when you can't read the room.
When you can't read it's hard.
That's a good panel.
While autistic.
Yay! Disabilities. Woohoo!
I mean, if y'all want to do this again.
Oh yeah. No, this is fun, and we got more and more questions coming in. But before we get to that, Tanya, where are we on the giveaways here?
We have 23 seconds for Omega's dice giveaway. So if you would like dice directly from the Critical Bard, and I have to make sure I look at the right.
Critical Bard trademark himself.
Yes, I also need
this
to
is
make
going to
sure I look at
happen.
the right camera.
The next 10 seconds, I'm going to do it.
You can do it.
No,
you got this.
You can do it.
Come on.
All right, we are picking
Your
a
forte
winner.
dice are looking a little piano. The focus is soft.
Shelly Von. Oh yes, you're here, Shelly. Please whisper Critical
I
Bard for your dice.
Yes, please.
So CB's somewhere in the chat. It's just Critical Bard. You got rid of the underscore, right?
Oh hey, there you go.
Yeah, can we? If you're subscribed to my channel, please give Dr. B the stare emote.
Yeah, I do deserve it for that one. I definitely deserve the look for that one.
And while I set up the next giveaway, this is a lot of text, so I'm going to try to condense it. It's the very long question before the short. Do we want to do the short question first?
Well, we've got a question that I think is going to be has to do with the COVID-19, the shift to the new normal in playing.
Yes, that is the very long question.
Yeah, so I think that's worth addressing as Tanya sets up our next giveaway.
Yes.
That we've adapted to playing D&D together over systems like Discord, and that is a very different skill set.
1 second, Raphael.
Oh, yes.
We already gave away the starter pack, so is this for the bundle?
Which, let's see, we actually had 2 starter packs.
Okay, so this is the second starter pack.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Right. We had 2 of those. So as we've adapted our playing skill set to playing over systems like Discord during COVID-19, have you all found that approaching players in your DMs to check in with them has helped them feel more comfortable opening up with suggestions, as opposed to, is there a difference with that versus in person? Like, as you're talking to your players, is doing this online different than doing it in person?
So, go ahead.
I would say yes, but as we know, tone does not always convey over text. And even when you are talking face to face, that doesn't mean that both people are on the same page. And Raphael, you'll laugh at this because he's known me for a long time, and I can be, I guess the polite way to say it is blunt. or if someone has gotten
I
on my
appreciate
last...
your straightforwardness.
You do, not everyone does. But you know, I try as best I can, but anyone who's known me any amount of time knows that when I get frustrated, it gets harder and harder to do. So sometimes I think DMing someone, either when you're in a game, because sometimes people can't take their focus away from the game to look at like even another whisper or monitor or whatever, and sometimes it can throw you out of that. So sometimes I try to hold things until the end of the game and after for a debrief. But again, sending someone a Twitter or DM or text message, I think is sometimes harder to convey than if we have a chance to look each other in the face on our Zoom call versus after the fact. Like after we're done, it's like, oh, there's this thing I meant to talk to you about and we didn't have time after.
I'm actually gonna jump in and say sometimes text is better for me. And this is an established thing for a lot of folks on the autism spectrum, because communicating via written form is not instantaneous. I get the opportunity to process what the person said with the sort of detail that I wouldn't in person, and I get to be more thoughtful in my reply in a way that I wouldn't otherwise in person. In fact, when it comes to really crucial conversations via text, that actually gives me the opportunity to send it to someone else where I'm like, hey, did I person okay on this one?
God, that's a mood. Oh, don't do that. Oh, that's a mood.
No, it's actually one of my ways of it's an interpersonal accommodation for me. I've got my people who are like, this can be read this way, this way, this way, this way. Change that. I'm like, okay, cool. And for me, text is actually a little bit more helpful.
For me, I think it depends on what is being discussed. My friends like to joke that I can read somebody to filth in person, but I can also read you to filth via text very easily, because I know how to word things in certain ways. But I think for me, it's all depending on what we need to talk about. If this is a, hey, let me just check in, or I'll say, if what we need to talk about is like pertaining to mechanics in a game or pertaining to, you know, gameplay or whatever, I can text with ease. That's nothing, because it's just, hey, it's like this versus this, and let's do this, blank, blank, blank. But for something more personal, I give the opportunity, if they want to, you know, do face-to-face, because, you know, reading someone's face and actually having that tone can be helpful, as far as, especially if it's something that's serious. But I also do and can use, you know, DMs or whatever the medium is to text somebody. But I do try to make sure I look at what I'm saying and it doesn't come off as being shady or sarcastic or, you know, whatever, because, you know, you can't perceive it all the time. I think for me, it's just dependent. It's dependent on what it is, how serious that thing is. And there's nothing wrong with being serious via text, but it is let's make sure it's not being misconstrued type of thing. And you have more ability to type it out, look at it and go, let me change that. Let me change this, because this might not read this way, versus you can't change your face when you're talking. So, I mean, it's dependent for me.
I think everyone has said all that really needs to be said on this topic. But I have a very interesting case about using Discord to play campaigns that I think might be of use to some people. And it's that playing one of my current campaigns over Discord has given me the opportunity to go deeper with backstory for some characters. Because so much of the campaign is remote anyway, it feels natural to take certain elements of the campaign backstory in particular out of the main game and do it elsewhere online. I have a text RP running right now with one of my players who, admittedly, I'm pretty close with anyway. So, you know, maybe this works best if you're close with your players, rather than their, you know, Adventurers League or other people you've just found online or something like that. But because of our campaign being all remote, it makes it very easy to get into a mindset where it's, let's just take a little bit before we play, or in the middle of the week when we're craving D&D, but we're not able to get the whole group together, and let's just like walk through some of the events of your backstory. Like let's work out that one scene that you told me was really important to who your character is today, and I'll take this character and you play your character, and we'll go through it bit by bit, and we'll figure out like what the actual heart of your character is this way. And that is something that I'd never done before. We'd gotten to this online only D&D paradigm, and I'm not sure I would have ever thought of it without that. So yeah, do some online out of game stuff with your characters, with your fellow players. It might be fun.
Almost like having a relationship helps the entire process.
Yeah, whoa, imagine that.
Whoa, really? I've been in a weird situation where like I've rarely played D&D in person. I've pretty much, even before pandemic, I've pretty much only played through Zoom and Discord, and Roll20. So it's been interesting, I guess, mostly because it's like for me it's been helping people adjust and sort of taking what I've learned from playing with people who are across the country or in a different country or in completely different time zones, and sort of taking those things I've learned and helping others. But I mean, for me in person, I like the distance being at my own desk and the camera gives me. I don't know why exactly, but it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable and loose and free to sort of have a little bit more space to play, I guess, physically, because I'm not around as many people. And that has helped me personally open up with like talking to other players about things. But I know that differs for everyone.
That's awesome. I love this. So we are just a moment away from our second to last giveaway completing, and when that does, when the starter pack, when the D&D Beyond starter pack is drawn, then we are going to begin the entry process for the legendary bundle. Every possible D&D Beyond book available. Thanks to our friends at D&D Beyond for this fantastic donation, and we're currently at $1,500 and $1,595. Y'all, if we can get to that $2,000 mark, I'm giving away one of my ties. I do not have a second one of these. This is my only one of this red polyhedral tie, and we will give that away. I'll sign it if you want.
I've donated already, but I will donate another $100 if 2 people match me.
Ooh.
Who's gonna do it? Who's going to match me? I'll do it right now.
2 people can match that. We're almost there.
We're almost there.
Oh my goodness!
Look, let me prove it.
10,000
Let
meals.
me prove it right now. I'm gonna do this. Bam. We had a lot of monies.
Oh,
We've got one person saying
Panther Lilycat.
Boom, boom. Okay, support us. Do this one more time. Gotta enter my information yet again.
My goodness, that's gonna put us so close.
One more. Do one more.
One more.
Who's gonna match?
Can someone else match in the chat? Although,
Come on.
$100 is no small amount. So if you can't,
No,
It's not.
No,
And
it's not. Which is why we are so thankful if there is anybody else who can match that. That's going to be an amazing thing. While we wait for that, I want to ask y'all. We had another question from the chat. How do you build out NPCs?
Oh boy.
There, just donated. Let's do more.
All right, we're picking a winner.
Yeah.
We got 2 more people.
Breezy Gonzalez, who was the amazing DM for the Dishonored RPG I was in this weekend during QuakeCon.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you have 2 people. Click Flicked. Who has one?
Yay, click. For me, for NPCs, and I won't lie, I saw this online somewhere and I forgot where, and it could have been Matt Mercer, I'm not even sure. But literally, 2 things. We all love that good old name generator. I guarantee you have seen it, you have probably used it. And if you haven't, look up Fantasy Name Generator. For me, just having a list of first names, a list of last names, a list of races. You don't need classes, but just being like, okay, let's get Abernathy Williamson, and he is a barista.
I've never met Abernathy, and I'm already like, I love
and
them.
Abernathy,
I love them.
and even having adjectives that go with them. They are very shy, and if you happen to go into a city, you go into a tavern, and you go to the bar, and Abernathy Williamson, the barista, even though a barista at a bar, I don't know, they're making a coffee beer, and they see you and they go, oh, hi, how are you? Would you like the special today? It's just those small, don't even know who they are. I know nothing about their backstory, but having just a random list to pull from and just go A, B, C, D, pick one of each, here, random D&D NPC. And they might not be perfect for that moment, but as long as you don't have the occupation, you can have these things ready, you can build something. Sometimes you find the random NPCs that you make are the NPCs that players, cling to. And now you can create more with them on the fly if that need is there. But yeah, I just find that having just random names and random adjectives about those names, having those to just pull from is a good way to build out things you didn't have before.
I think when it comes to like key NPCs, so like these are the NPCs that are like core to your story. They hold the turning points to the story, the plot you want to tell. And I think it's something really interesting, like something you said, where it's like they'll always latch onto the NPCs that like you don't really plan on them. And I think it's because people like to put, when they encounter these characters, there is that instinctive want to like put a little bit of themselves in that character. So when you make it like a key NPC, if you flesh out every single thing, it doesn't give the players themselves to put a little bit more of like what they want to see or what they imagine that character to be when they approach them. And so for me, whenever I've started out like trying to build like key NPCs of like, okay, this is them, this is their backstory, this is all the blah 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 blah, and I had like full reference documents. And slowly over time, I started pulling back from that and just sort of making sure I had a consistent like physical description, and then like maybe like a bullet point or two. I always liked to get my players hooked or invested in these NPCs. It was a lot of like figuring out when they interact with this NPC, what do they like? What do they latch onto? What parts do they want to see more out of this NPC? And by answering the questions they have about that NPC, it builds out that key NPC, but it also gives your players a chance to collaborate with the world and engage with it on a creative level rather than just a participatory level. And that's always been that way of getting your players like not necessarily attached, because that feels weird to say, but like getting your players invested and interested into NPCs. I think that is what I've always sort of found through my very limited experience. I do not have very many successful cute not cute, but like interesting NPCs under my belt though, so that's something I'm still working on.
I want to go back to Abernathy because I know Abernathy makes the best latte foam. I just know this right away. Abernathy is dedicated to their craft.
See, look, we don't know Abernathy, but we love him now because we've all put a little bit of ourselves into Abernathy, okay?
Look, and he's even developed a mead that has a little caffeine kick to it. And when you drink this mead for the next hour, for some reason you feel so just ready and prepared that you are under the effects of guidance, and you can use it.
Bee-Buzz mead? I am down for this.
Oh my god.
See, look, and now we're all attached to Abernathy. We know nothing about him, but look what you've done.
So Abernathy needs to appear in someone's games.
It's going to happen. It is going to happen. Now I need it.
Oh my god. For me, I don't know, like, it's weird
for
because... Mead? I mean, honestly, if somebody had some mead right now, I'd take it, because I haven't had good mead in far too long. But, like, for the Infernal Goose game, for instance, Brian, who some of you have met, Brian Gray, Urban Bohemian, I based a bartender in Avernus off Brian, but as a tiefling. And he was Alexander Ne'er-do-well. I also threw in some Hamilton references. Because Brian is my friend, and he's very dapper, and he knows a lot about drinks. He has inebriati in his Twitter profile, so I took that with his permission and ran with it. So whenever I run the Infernal Goose game, Alexander Ne'er-do-well, the tiefling bartender, shall attend you at some point if you go into the right spots.
God, that's so cool. James, what do you do? How do you build people out?
Really quickly, James. I'm not to cut you off, but we just hit 2,000, y'all.
Yeah.
Tie.
Woohoo!
I'm giving away a bow tie.
All right, go ahead.
Man.
Well, that's 10,000 meals y'all have helped raise in just a little
Yay.
over 2 hours. That's fantastic. Let's get some hype in the chat.
There is a hype command, y'all.
Yes.
I'm
they
trying
already
to think
did.
about what I do to create NPCs. And I hear your processes, and I'm like, I don't do any of that. I just kind of go on a walk every day, and I let my mind wander and daydream, and sometimes NPCs will come out of it. Sometimes the characters will be like, oh, hello. I'll invite you into my game. I'll write you down. Pop out my notepad, which I keep with me at all times. Pop an NPC in there, a couple of character traits, a backstory, and oh, what if I connected him to that character? Oh, what if they used to be adventurers together? Like, oh my god, what if that? I have precious little of a process when it comes to creating NPCs. It's a free association game in my mind that happens whenever I'm doing something where I'm free to let my mind wander, like sitting in the shower, like taking a walk, driving somewhere. I mean, don't let your mind wander when you're driving somewhere. That's dangerous. But if I really sit down and try and like create an NPC whole cloth in the moment, it's very, very challenging for me because it's just not the way my brain works. I can pull a random NPC whose name I come up with out of a hat because I've watched a lot of movies and I've read a lot of books, and I can draw names from there and personality traits from there. And ooh, what if they looked kind of like Orlando Bloom? What if they talked like Neville Longbottom or something like that? I've got that cast in my head of everything I've ever watched or read. And I can just kind of cherry pick whatever floats to the top in the moment. But if you're someone who likes to plan out NPCs, I wonder if this would work for other people, or if this is just kind of a quirk of how my brain works. If you can go into that free association mode while you're letting your mind wander and daydreaming, and if you can find people just kind of bubbling out of your subconscious in a way that you can capture like a snapshot and hang on to for later.
Oh, that's awesome. I just steal from media and reskin them.
That's what I'm doing, but with fewer steps.
Well, I mean, I already mentioned King Bob, who I stole basically from Governor William J. LaPette of Maine from Blazing Saddles. He's ineffective and senile. He doesn't actually run the kingdom. His vizier does, who I stole from Discworld. And repackaged. It's in the moment. I'm just like, what media characters do I like? Change the name, change the appearance, change a few things. Boom, NPC.
I mean, I did.
Got one, what's that?
Go ahead.
Well,
I like
got
how
one
three of
that
us
shows up
talked.
all the time. Who's named Steve. No last name, Steve. He gets fired from every job, but has a lot of cousins. So I stole. He's based on the Gumby characters from Monty Python, and he's got a lot of cousins who seem to hire him, so he shows up in every town. And they hate him so much.
Oh, poor guy. I thought about that with Rivals. I've never DM Rivals, but the poor guy named Kevin that is just useless. He literally tripped and fell on his own sword, and then he did it again. Oh. Look, Kevin got a bad dice roll and Sleece was having a great day. It sucked to be Kevin both times we met him. I think having someone who's a cousin or a friend of, you find an NPC that you like, and it's like, by the way, you go to a new location and they look vaguely familiar. So Alexander Ne'er-do-well has a cousin in the mortal realm that is bartending somewhere that is not Avernus, but he is like a human, dapper, dark-skinned person versus a tiefling in Avernus.
Yeah, and I also think of, I'm sure everyone has done it. You kind of just like sitting in your bed, or you munching on some Cheerios or whatever you're doing, and a random character comes to mind. And it's like, ooh, I would love to play a Genasi sorcerer. And you start thinking of backstories for this character. You don't know why, and you're probably never going to play them, but you randomly are just thinking about characters. You can apply that idea and concept to making an NPC. When you're just like, you're watching Sister or something, and it's not nothing you see on screen, but all of a sudden, oh, Abernathy, wow. Mark that somewhere, put it down, and now you're like all of a sudden thinking of all these things, and you have lists of people you can pull. And like Tanya said, you can take those characters, and then if you need to plug them in a different place, you can do that. Like now Abernathy, instead of being a barista at a bar, he is, I don't know, he is like the cook as a goblin in a goblin fortress you go through. And he might be one of the goblins that might help you. He's still shy. He's not as abrasive as most goblins can be, but he's still there. Abernathy still lives. You can reuse, reduce, and recycle all of the NPCs that you come up with, because who knows who they are? Your players don't. You do, but the players don't. So have fun.
I feel like Abernathy is now going to appear in so many campaigns across the world now.
It is done.
They're just, everyone's
Abernathy's
going to
about to be
have
a
some
legend.
version of Abernathy Williamson in their game.
They got a musical going on
I
in
know!
the chat.
My name is
Chicago
Abernathy
in on this.
Williamson.
Oh my
Or
god.
maybe he had it coming was for Kevin.
Yes, he had it come as for Kevin. Let's not forget our friend Gary the Lime. That became Gary, one of the frogs that Brandon's character adopted, the time toads or whatever they were. We kept, like, there was Gary the Lime 1, 2, and 3. Then there were toads named Gary and Mary, I think. You can recycle names. Gary was great in that gin and tonic I had after the show.
Yeah, like I said, I think when it comes to like naming NPCs, I just like, one of my favorite NPCs was like named 12, because I had NPCs for every single number on the clock, and so like that was real easy. I was like, I need NPCs, like this is gonna be a show that plays around a little bit with time, so well, I mean, that makes sense. We'll just have NPCs that are 1 through 12, and 12 ended up being like a clockwork sparrow, which is why I have this bad boy sitting here.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love these creative ideas. I love all of this. So one of the questions I like to close panels with is one that I love to use this over and over again. But if y'all had one thing you wanted people to walk away from this panel with, if they could remember just one thing, what would you want it to be?
Oh boy.
Aside from Abernathy, the cocktail barista.
I would say play the D&D game you want run for you. Or play the RPG that you would want run for you. Think of the things that would be fun, that would make you happy, and then, listen to your players, listen to the feedback they give you. But don't play a campaign that you think, other people would like. If you have passion for something, that passion will shine through in your DMing, in your GMing, and other people will feel it, and your fun will be infectious. And everyone at the table will have fun. And then listen to feedback and tweak it if you need to, but start with that first.
Mine is quick and easy, and it's only gonna be quick and easy because my food's like down the street. I told you I was getting seafood. Don't be afraid to. It's okay to fail as a DM, and what I mean by that is you're never gonna get things right. There's always gonna be something that potentially goes wrong. You're gonna prepare something and all of a sudden you didn't do that. Failure is never the end. Failure is just a chance for you to get back up and go further than you did. At first you don't succeed, pick yourself up and try again. That's true to this game and to DMing. Tanya and James and everyone mentioned experience. That's real. You're going to learn what works and you're going to learn what doesn't work. And you're probably going to learn what doesn't work more than you will what does. And that helps you grow as a dungeon master, as a game master, as whatever you want to call yourself. And just have fun. Have fun with it. It's a game at the end of the day, and you're never a professional, a advanced person from the jump. So allow yourself to fail, allow yourself to fall, but then get up and keep going, because it's going to be better in the long run. I'll be right back.
For me, it's be patient and understand that doing any of this takes time, and don't beat yourself up if it's not perfect or whatever you think that should look like the very first time you DM. It's okay to make mistakes and to fail.
I think for me it would be, remember that you are your own unique person, and that means your brain is its own unique thing, and what some people say and the advice some people give may not work for your brain. The important part is to understand that is to go through that journey and figure out what works for your brain. And when things don't work for your brain, or your brain can't process something, it's not a bad thing. And if you can't follow some person you admire's advice because your brain simply can't process it, that doesn't mean you're bad at DMing or bad at whatever you're trying to do. At the very end of the day, it's important you remember that to figure out what works for you sometimes means accepting that you can't do certain things, and that's okay. And like everyone is saying, you are going to fail. Rolling 10s and below on a d20 are just kind of part of the gig. But sometimes failures can lead to really awesome things, as long as you keep playing after you roll that badly.
I'm going to throw in there, I basically echoing what everybody else said, that play to your strengths. Play to what your particular strengths are. Don't expect yourself to be someone else, to have somebody else's strengths. Bring your own unique flavor, because whatever you bring to the table is valuable to someone. That is one of the most important things I think to remember about running a tabletop RPG, is that your strengths are valuable to someone, even if it's not your first group, even if it's not your second group, and maybe your third group. And once you find that match, it's magic. But just play to your strengths.
If you got to step out and get seafood every now and then, I mean, take care of yourself. Go grab
But
it.
if I could step out and get seafood, I would.
Yeah. Whatever your seafood
I may
is,
go
you know.
after
It's
this.
going to get
and-
messy, so I'm just going to wait.
Well, that's fantastic. So if Hallway Secrets, it looks like you are the winner of the legendary bundle. First of all, congratulations. Please
Woohoo!
whisper to me. We'll get you to email me. And then we have Tanya, we got one more quick giveaway of
Yes, I'm setting that up as we chat. For 5 minutes.
Mhm.
What fabulous prize can people win, Dr. B?
my bow tie. One of my red polyhedral dice bow ties.
It's so pretty.
It's wonderful. You will have to learn to tie your own bow tie, but I have plenty. There's plenty of resources. Takes a little bit to master. It's all good. But can we just, in the chat, can we get some thanks to Tanya for putting all of this together and running this on the fly, such at the at the last minute. Tanya saved all of this by doing all this.
Tanya made that oh hell face the minute you said that.
And as we're entering for the dice tie, and we're thanking Tanya, I also want to take an opportunity to thank our sponsors of these fantastic prizes: D&D Beyond, Roll20. Thank you, Critical Bard, for throwing in some prizes, the dice as well. Thank you, Tanya, for throwing in some, the dice from Level Up Dice for Rivals of Waterdeep. Y'all, we have raised $2,000. Our original goal was $1,000. $2,000 has provided 10,000 meals to families who need it during COVID. Y'all are amazing. This is fantastic. Hey, everybody, where can people find you on the socials?
Shall we start with?
Well, you know what? Given I'm running this thing, I should probably say that, shouldn't I? You know, James, since you just spoke up, let's start with you.
Okay. It's been great chatting with all of you. Thank you so much, first of all. If you want to follow my stuff, if you want to see articles on D&D Beyond, check out the front page of dndbeyond.com. I talk DMing tips, I talk D&D encounters, I talk Class 101 for players, everything you can imagine when it comes to D&D. I want to be that person who gets your game off the ground. Find me there at dndbeyond.com. You can also find me on Twitter. I believe my handle is right here in the overlay, somewhere right there, at JamesJHaeck. If you want to find me on social media, that's the place to do it. Thanks so much for having me, Dr. B.
Thanks for agreeing to do this on such short notice and for such a good cause. And thanks for Mox Sporting House in Seattle and Bellevue and now Portland for putting this all together as well for Food Lifeline. Mackenzie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm just making sure. Yes, I am unmuted. Okay, I've been doing this for how long and I still mess that up. Anyways, you can find me over on Twitter at MakenzieLaneDA. The Twitter is right there. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can check out, I'm a writer. I do stuff on DM's Guild. I currently am the lead writer for The Islands of Sina Una, which is an upcoming 5e setting based around pre-colonial Filipino culture and mythology. So if you want to play as the warlock of an entity that wants to swallow the moon and end the world, or if you want to play as a wizard who makes scrolls out of bamboo, or a fighter whose entire premise is being a defender and defending as best as possible, or more. We've got new classes, new subclasses, a whole new world. It's awesome, and it's coming out.
It's amazing.
Later this year.
I am looking forward to this.
I'm super excited for it. I've also got cool stuff coming out with MCDM and with Mage Hand Press, both of which I yell about over on Twitter. Thank you so much for letting me ramble on and on about this panel. About DMing and having me on this panel. This has been amazing, and everyone around this table are people I admire and look at on Twitter and go, oh my god, they're so cool. So this is great.
CB?
Hey friends, my name is Omega Jones, also known as the Critical Bard. I am Critical Bard across all social media channels, including Twitch. Yeah, that's where you can find me. I do stream a lot. I am a variety streamer on Twitch. Again, you see my name in chat. Feel free to follow me there. I do a lot of stuff. Just finished Last of Us Part 2, starting some game, I don't know. I gotta figure it out. That's really what you can find me doing. I do have a talk show every Tuesday called In Unison on my channel, where I duet with someone in the community. You can actually check the VOD because Dr. B was my last guest on Tuesday. We talked about some really cool stuff. So check that out every Tuesday. It's pretty great. And that's me. I will also say be on the lookout for the next installment for the hashtag BlackAF Roundtable, which is a roundtable involving Black creators in the tabletop gaming community, where we talk about some real stuff, including racism in the community that people don't want to admit. So that's cool. Love you all. Keep making trouble. Thank you for letting me be here. Bye.
Thank you for being here. Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya DePass, also known as CypherofTyr. You can find me in a variety of places. Sundays over at twitch.tv/DND with Rivals Waterdeep. We have 2 episodes left in our 7th season, and we'll be making announcements about the future of Rivals after our season finale. Thursdays, find me on Wandering DM's channel, DMing Dragon Age. And I got to tweet it before we did this panel. You know, knock on wood that we can travel safely by this time next year. I'll actually be DMing at D&D in a Castle in September and November. So, doing that. I guested on Dark and Wish. It's pre-recorded. That episode comes out Thursday. And I think that's it. I'm doing a lot of stuff and never sleeping again, I guess. And I stream here. I may even stream later after some food. I don't know, because this is my 2nd stream today of being on one.
You are a champ.
So,
you're an absolute champ.
Oh, that's the other thing. Normally on Sundays, we do Aegon over at Bard and Barbarian. But we are taking the week off just because life often gets in the way. And of all the things I forgot, Dungeon Crossing. Dungeon Crossing right here and over at twitch.tv Gary Witta. Saturdays 10 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Central. I take a bunch of friends through D&D, but in Animal Crossing. And along the way, we talk about this kind of stuff. So when things happen and we get an opportunity, we do some kind of player and other tips along the way. And we do a little bit of debrief at the end. So we didn't play yesterday because, again, life gets in the way of rolling D20s on occasion. But December, oh my god, I can't be December already. August 15th, we resume. Gary and I co-stream. So yeah, back to Animal Crossing in D&D. Or D&D in Animal Crossing. It's been a very long day, y'all.
So cool.
Yes, and did our winner...
For Neon Skeletor, I have not heard from Neon Skeletor. Apparently, they don't want to learn to tie a bow tie.
All right, we're going to try one more, and then we're going to give up on this, because we've already gone like a half hour over.
Thank y'all for doing that, for being here for that extra half an hour.
Oh, Neon Skeletor
There they are.
spoke up.
There we go. Yes, Neon Skeletor, please, please whisper to me, and we'll get you.
Well, they were a little late. I had picked Sassy Boy.
Ooh.
But Sassy Boy didn't say anything yet.
I
Wow.
mean, they were there. I mean, they pulled to a second after. They just didn't.
I'm inclined.
I will not be the I will not be the judge of that.
I'm inclined to give it to Neon Skeletor for coming in at the wire.
All right, Neon Skeletor, it is all
Neon
you.
Skeletor, just whisper to me, and we'll get that. Let's see here, y'all. Thank you for being here. Are we going to raid over to the next featured streamer for Mox Boarding House?
Who is that?
Yeah, Hearthsinger Game.
Hopefully they are allowing raids. Game or
Let's
games?
hope so.
Game or games? With an S?
With an S.
Okay.
Games, yeah.
Hearthsinger Games?
Yeah, I just sent you the link.
Got it. The right person.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. We're gonna raid Hearthsinger Games, but amazing stream. Can't wait to chat with you all again.
This was good. Thank you so much for letting me
Thank
be
you
here.
so much for having us.
My friends,
No
I could
worries.
talk with you for 3 times this long.
Yes.
So great to see you all.
All right. See you over in Hearthsinger, and we're out. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Flat. Okay.
1 second.